All right, Shalom. I would like to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. That's first and foremost. Also, double honors to the elder apostles of GMS who rule well. And honor and salutations to those of you who are of the elect. All right, today's topic is going to be I'm gonna make a series out of it only because it's I wanted to get into these articles that I found, and it's a little bit of reading, so to make it to keep it short, I'm gonna split it up and put it in a couple different parts. But the topic is the people that are in our land, the land of Israel, the so-called white people who are calling themselves Israeli or Jewish or Levi or Levi, the people that are toting our heritage, our religion, our culture, if you will. They are not the descendants of the children of Israel. They don't fit prophecy. They don't behave the way the scriptures say Israelites behave. They don't have flavor the way we do. And the list goes on. And the list goes on as far as reasons for why we say they are not the children of Israel. But mostly it's just because it's not true. It's not true. So what I wanted to do was go into this in Ezekiel 36 verses 1 through 5 for this first part. There's a lot said in here that I wanted to talk about, and like I said, I looked up some articles, and hopefully at the end of each lesson, but at the end of the lesson altogether, hopefully it's edifying. It'll add bullets to the weapon, so to speak, or give you some ammunition for when you're out there on highways and byways, or when you're in everyday conversation and this topic happens to come up. You'll have some ammunition to go with. But anyway, without further ado, so again, like I said, this is a prophecy that touches on, how the so-called Jews, or the Edomites who took our land, came into the land, or came about taking that land, and what their sentiment was in taking the land. So I'm gonna read this, and I'm gonna get into. Pardon me. I mean, I'm gonna get into a couple of these articles that I found, and I'm gonna get out of your hair. All right, so this is Ezekiel 36 and 1. It says, also, thou son of man, prophesy unto the mountains of Israel, and say, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord power, because the enemy have said against you, aha, even the ancient high places are ours in possession. You see, so what are the ancient high places? Matter of fact, let's I never looked that up before. Let's look that up. Ancient Walam. All right, high place. I'm trying to decide which one. I'll just look up both of them. Long duration, antiquity, futurity, forever, everlasting, evermore, perpetual, old, ancient, forever, always, continuous. Let's look up that other word there. Places. Bama. A high place, ridge, height, Bama, high place, mountain, high places, battlefield. So this is talking about Israel, right? These ancient high places are talking about Israel. And it says here that the enemy have said against you, aha, even the ancient high places are ours in possession. Now, who who is possessing our land. Edomites, by way of Amalek, that their head tribe, just like our nation has a head tribe, the tribe of Judah. Their nation has a head tribe, and it's Amalek. The scriptures talk about them being the first of the nations, right? Because when we were coming out of Egypt, right, and we were in the wilderness, they were while we were in our weakest state, thirsty and hungry and tired, and probably feet had blisters and kids crying, and while we were at our weakest point, Amalek tried to attack us, and the Lord remembered that. So this is who this is talking about. This is who this enemy is talking about in Lord's will. I'll show that. All right, so this is verse 3. It says, "Therefore prophesy and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because they have made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that ye might be a possession unto the residue of the heathen, and ye are taken up in the lips of talkers, and are in infamy of the people." Now, this is where I wanted to start getting into it. So it talks about being made desolate and being swallowed up on every side, being a possession to the heathen, right? Being an infamy. Now, when you look in history, you can start at the time when the Lord Yahweh Shai came onto the scene, all the way up until now. Being a Israelite, especially when after Yahweh Shai had passed, being a Israelite or being a Jew or being a proselyte, which was one of the foreigners coming back into the knowledge of being an Israelite, those people weren't treated very well at that time. They were being stoned to death. They were being crucified by way of the Roman death penalty, and it wasn't a good time for those people, right? So naturally, because they were being persecuted, because they were being what's the word I'm looking for? Not ostracized. What's the word I wanted to say? Basically, when you get cast out of a land, I can't think of it, but it'll come to me, Lord's will. But they were casted out of all the lands where they dwelt, and in that time, especially in the so-called Middle Ages, there weren't many. The places for them to go were getting smaller and smaller, because they were being. So you had at the time, in the so-called Dark Ages, you had the two superpowers, which were the religious superpowers. I should make note. Islam on one end, and then you had Christianity on the other end. Now, the interesting thing about the two of these religions, our people, Israelites, were at the head of each of them. You had you had the Christianity that was going on in Rome, and then Islam in some of the southern places, like Arabia, of course, and even in Jerusalem, right? So these were the two religious superpowers. But the interesting thing was that it was by our people, Israelites, who had done away with that idea of being an Israelite, have done away with that idea of being a Jew. For one, no one wanted to be associated with the death of an innocent man, and for two, Israelites weren't being treated very well. They weren't being treated very well because of their fervor for what they believed in, believing that the Lord Yahweh Shai was gonna, which is true, believing that the Lord Yahweh Shai was gonna deliver us and save us, and His death meant that time was coming soon. Israelites that were being called Christians at the time were making a lot of noise, and they were a nuisance, if you will, right? So because of that, people were persecuting them. They were killing them and evicting them, if you will, out of their lands, and the places were getting very slim for where they could go. So, I wanted to look up some of these words in here. Let's go to desolate first. Okay, so this is desolate. Shamam. Okay. Actually, let me play it. I don't want to be lazy here.
Strong's H 8074. Shamaim. Shamaim.
All right, so you got the Shah, Ma, and then this is the ending Ma, I believe. So you would get Shamam, right? So it says to be desolate, be appalled, stunned, stupefy, to be desolated, be deflowered, be deserted, be appalled, to be appalled, be awestruck, to be desolate, be made desolate, to be appalled, to be stunned, right? You know, at that time, you can go back to Masada, you can go back to which was in 70 AD. I was gonna say like it was two separate events, but you when I think it's Tiberius, not Tiberius. Let me look it up so I don't mess this up. I think it is Tiberius. I can't think of what to put in here in the search engine, but forgive me. But if you go into the book, not Lost Tribes and Promised Lands, From Babylon to Timbuktu, it talks about how the Jews were persecuted in 70 AD, and for some reason that emperor escapes me right now. Hopefully it'll come to me. But you can go all the way back to those events and all the way up until you get to more modern, which was the I want to say that like the Spanish Inquisition and all those more not modern as in today, but modern, more recent as far as time was concerned. From that period, from 70 AD up until, you know, the Israelites started going into the transatlantic slave trade, being a Israelite wasn't a good thing. So they were, like, again, they were stunned, devastated, you know, ravaged, right? So these are some of the things that were happening to them in that time. You know, you can go into, you know, the history of it, right? And I'm going to touch on it a little bit here. So that's that word desolate, swallowed up. That's kind of self-explanatory, right? To be made a possession, right? They were taken into different slaveries. They were made to work for different nations of people, right? So this is the part right here. And ye are taken up in the lips of talkers and are in infamy. So I wanted to look up that word infamy, right? So it says whispering, defamation, evil report. And again, at that time, and matter of fact, I should go to it now. I'm gonna go to a couple different things. I wanted to go to this article right here first, where, you know, to be a Jew wasn't a good thing, man. To be an Israelite wasn't a good thing. To believe in the Lord Yahweh Shai wasn't a good thing at that time, and in some instances, in some cases, it was even written into law that it was illegal to be an Israelite, right? So it wasn't a good thing. So I'm gonna get down to this, and then I'm gonna jump to another article. But I wanted to read this one here. This is from a website called Christianity Today. Okay. It says persecution in the early church. Did you know? Okay. It says, beginning as a despised, illicit religious sect, Christianity endured 300 years of hostility to emerge as the dominant force in the Roman Empire. So what's interesting about this this statement here, one I wanted to say this, that, you know, today's Christianity has no I'll say understanding of what it is to believe in the Lord Yahweh Shai. To believe in the Lord Yahweh Shai is a work of suffering. And they told Christianity, they talk about Christianity, they observe Christianity as something that makes everybody happy, makes everybody love each other. But Christianity in the beginning, and in it almost is synonymous with suffering, man. There's been no time in history that real Christians, real followers of the Lord Yahweh Shai, there's been no time in history where they've been treated right. And especially like in all these things that I'm going to read, these things are going to happen today. These things are going to be the things that happen to us for being out on the highways and byways teaching in the name of the Lord Yahweh Shai. They tried to stop it then, and they're going to do the same now. And the second thing I wanted to say that was interesting about this, you had it says it went through 300 years of hostility to emerge as the dominant force in the Roman Empire. When the so-called Roman Empire, like during Constantine's time, when they adopted Christianity, a lot of it was nothing more than pagan worship that the Romans had been following, with the name of Christianity put on it, right? So I thought that was an interesting statement. But let me get into this. I don't want to be too talkative here. It says early Christians expected suffering. You see that? You see? Now, like I said, you got Christians of the day. They have no idea what suffering is. You know, this new brand of Christianity teaches a thing of, if you believe, you'll get a paycheck, or if you tithe, you'll get some kind of monetary gain, right? So it says Hamashiach, or Yahushua, had died on the cross, so there was no higher honor than to imitate that death through accepting martyrdom witnessed by one's blood. The Jewish legacy portrayed in writings such as the fourth book of the Maccabees, the glorious nature of death rather than renunciation of Israel. Even without this, Christianity would inevitably have held the martyr's death in high esteem. As the writer of 1 Peter expressed it, if you suffer as a Christian, do not be ashamed, but praise the Most High that ye bear that name. Okay, it says, why were Christians persecuted? How was it that the church underwent such sacrifices? The Roman religion was not intolerant. Rome had accepted into its pantheon deities from the Italian tribes and from Asia Minor. In the provinces, the great territorial gods such as Saturn in North Africa and Yahweh among the Jews were accepted as legal religion on the grounds that their rites, even if barbarous, were sanctified by ancient tradition. Countless local gods and goddesses worshipped by the ordinary inhabitants of Greco-Roman world were often provided with a classical equivalent name and worshipped as Roman deities. You see? So it says, despite this toleration, by the early 2nd century, the Roman governor of Bithynia on the Black Sea had no hesitation in sending to immediate execution those who had been denounced as being Christians. The name alone was a sufficient death warrant. Reasons for the persecution emerged from the record of Christianity's first 3 centuries. Okay, so fratricidal strife. So this word means basically like when you have beef with your brother. Like frat is let's look up the word, because I'm trying to be fancy here, but I looked this up a few minutes ago, so let's go back to it. All right, so it says relating to or denoting conflict within a single family or organization. Like when you have a fraternity, right? So this would mean like between you and your brothers or you and your family, you're having a conflict, right? Which is interesting because I want to go back to that article here. It says persecution did not begin with Roman authorities. The New Testament writings tell of fratricidal strife between Jews and Christians, right? Now, why was it fratricidal? Because Jews and Christians were the same, but the Christians were being who were the Israelite foreigners coming back into their inheritance by the death of the Lord Yahweh Shai. They were being called Christians because that's what their whole that's what it was about. Whereas the Jews were stuck on believing by keeping the law and keeping the heritage, right? So this is why there was a separation between the two, but really it was the same, which is why this word here is used. These were the same people. They just had different beliefs, right? So it says the latter challenging the Jews by claiming to be the new Israel. In the early chapters of Acts, Stephen and James, the brother of John, the disciple, became victims of the Jerusalem mob and of King Herod Agrippa, respectively. Indeed, the writer of Luke, Acts, appears to go out of his way to measure the Roman authorities, of the loyalty and general value of the Christians and the hostility of the Jews towards them, right? The persecutors and their motives changed in AD 64. On July 19th that year, a great fire engulfed much of Rome. Only 4 of the 14 quarters of the city escaped damage. Suspicion immediately fell on Emperor Nero. So this is really what I wanted to get into. So just to show you just a little bit of how easy it was to persecute Israel at that time. You know, here it is, this fire breaks out. You know, they'll say in history that no one knows who did it, but Nero did it. Whether it was to rebuild the city of Rome or whether it was to have a reason to kill Israel, he did it. They'll say when you read these documents that they're unsure, but he did it. He was responsible for it. But this just goes to show how easy a target being an Israelite was at that time, to be persecuted at that time, right? So so it says here, suspicion immediately fell on Emperor Nero. Was this a madcap way of clearing out part of the city to make room for new magnificent streets and buildings in his honor? Nero, however, managed to deflect blame first, apparently, on the Jews, who had a reputation of large-scale arson, but also had friends at court, and then onto the Christians. Many Christians, perhaps, including Peter, were seized, tortured, and done to death in the arena. Okay. So I had this highlighted. I'm sure you could see when I first opened it. But I wanted to go to what Tacitus said about this this whole time here. So I got the article right here. So this guy Tacitus, who I think was a governor. Let me see. It says it up here, I think. Okay, he was a senator. Okay. A historian and a senator. That's what I wanted to say. I said governor. But he was a historian, and he wrote this body of work, which is now being called annals, which is basically a word that just means basically something that's written in order as far as years are concerned, right? So he wrote this work, and a big part of that work that he wrote was so-called, Christians and what they were doing in that time. And you can hear how he, in his language, that he had a personal disdain for Israelites. But he wrote about their chaos, for lack of a better term. He wrote about it. So I want to read this really quick. It says, the Annals passage, which has been subjected to much scholarly analysis, follows a description of the 6-day Great Fire of Rome that burned much of Rome in July 64 AD. The key part of the passage reads as follows. It's translated from Latin by these two guys here. All right, it says, consequently, to get rid of the report, which was that Nero had started the fire, as I read in that other article, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus or Hamashiach, I'll say, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate, and a most mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of the evil, he says, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful from every part of the world find their center and become popular. Right. So basically he said, look, it got to Rome, and, because it was in Rome, and Rome was such a popular city, it went everywhere. So this dude is talking about it like it's like a disease or a plague, in which it was, in which it still is to this day. Because look how, since the elder apostles have gotten on YouTube, how this thing has spread so fast, like a wildfire, man. So the truth, whether in ancient times or in modern times, still holds that same quick burn spirit to it, because the truth is contagious, especially in a world where lies are being spread so vastly, right? So it says, accordingly, an arrest was first made of all who pleaded guilty. Then, upon their information, an immense multitude was convicted, not so much of the crime of fire in the city as of hatred against mankind. So this is the persecution that was going on to the Israelites at that time. Okay, and you can go into this annals or annals. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it really don't matter. You can go into this work by this guy Tacitus and read about this. Because he talks more about. Matter of fact, I'll go down and read a little bit more. This is how it was written in the Latin. Okay. Oh snap! I didn't even see this. Oh, this is I thought that said Idumea for a minute. Oh boy. It said this is the Greek. The Latin way of saying Judea. Okay. It says Tacitus then describes the torture of Christians. The exact cause of the fire remains uncertain, but much of the population of Rome suspected that Emperor Nero had started the fire himself. To divert attention from himself, Nero accused the Christians of starting the fire and persecuted them, making this the first documented confrontation between Christians and the authorities in Rome. Tacitus never accused Nero of playing the liar while Rome burned. That statement came from Cassius Dio, who died in the 3rd century. But Tacitus did suggest that Nero used Christians as scapegoats. You see, so being an Israelite, talking about or promoting or praising the name of Yahushua wasn't a good thing back then. Okay, so where did they go? If from every side, like the scripture says here in Ezekiel 36, it says that they were persecuted on every side. Right, it says for Ezekiel 36:3, therefore prophesy and say, thus saith the Lord power, because they have made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that ye might be a possession unto the residue of the heathen, and ye are taken up in the lips of talkers, right, like this guy Tacitus, and are an infamy of the people, right? So they had a bad reputation, right? So because this has happened, they had to go somewhere. Of course, again, like I always say this, that the diaspora wasn't one time. It happened through many different times in history, which is how Israel got spread throughout the four corners of the earth. And when you read Isaiah the 11th chapter, for sake of time, I won't go to it now, but when you read Isaiah the 11th chapter, it talks about all the different lands that we were spread, and it happened throughout history. It wasn't just one event specifically or in particular. It was a series of events that happened throughout history that kind of spread us out throughout the whole world. But they at a particular time, especially in the what they call the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, they went somewhere, and where they went was the land of Khazaria, right? This ain't the one I want though. This ain't the one I want. Where is it? Here it is right here. So they went to Khazaria, right? So this is a page from the book The 13th Tribe by Arthur Koestler. I'll look it up so I can show it to you. And forgive me, I'm being long-winded here, but I feel like this information would have been useful, so bear with me. So this is the book here by Arthur Koestler. I used to have it. We passed it around, so I'm somebody got it, but I know one of the brothers got it. But it's a book by this guy Arthur Koestler, and he talks about if the so-called Jews that are in the land today, the Jewish people of the land, if they are indeed Israelites, then they would have to have been a 13th tribe. And it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek statement, because it's well known that there were only 12 tribes that were prophesied that they were going to be delivered, right? But why this is significant is this Khazar land, right? This Khazar land, a lot of Israelite men and women and families, I should say, fled to this Khazarian land, because it was the one place where they weren't being persecuted in the way that you see in these articles that I've read. This is the one place that they could go and they could be, themselves, but they were refugees, but they could be who they were. But what's funny is, the 100 or so years that they were in this land in Khazar, this is the time where, just like the devil Esau is, they sat back and they befriended us, right? Matter of fact, let me go to I'll open up another one and go to Psalms, where it says words smoother. Look it up like that. Right. This is Psalms 55:21. It says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. Right. So this is their mentality. What they do is they befriend you and they wait for you to, be yourself around them, get comfortable around them. And then they take whatever you give off, your energy, your spirit, your heritage, your culture, and they take it and they make it their own. Right. And they're doing that now. I showed you in one of the last shows I did with that, that white lady with the whoop, there it is, and and all of that shit. They take our flavor and they take it as their own. And as we always say, in another 100 years, another 200 years, if it went on this way, LeBron James would be white, Michael Jordan would be white, and this is just what they do, right? So when you go into this book here, in this part that I'm going to read to you, you'll see that at the time, like I said, with Islam and Christianity being two superpowers, in order for the Khazarian Empire to maintain its independence from those two, they had to adopt a religion or a god of their own. And what better religion than to take the one that each of those came from? Because, contrary to belief, Islam and this Christianity that they did under the Byzantine Empire, they both derive from Israelite culture, the law, statutes, and commandments, and the ways of Israel, right? So they took on this this heritage, but I wanted to read to you what happened, right? So it's this is a quote from this guy Burry, right? So it says here, there can be no question that the ruler was actuated by political motives in adopting Judaism. You see, it says to embrace Mohammedanism would have made him the spiritual dependent of the caliphs who attempted to press their faith on the Khazars, and in Christianity lay the danger of his becoming an ecclesiastical vassal of the Roman Empire. Judaism was a reputable religion with sacred books which both Christian and Mohammedan respected. It elevated him above the heathen barbarians and secured him against the interference of caliph or emperor. But he did not adopt, along with circumcision, the intolerance of the Jewish cult. He allowed the mass of the people to abide in their heathendom and worship their idols. Right. So now, when you look at modern Jewry, right, I'll say these Edomites that are calling themselves Jews, you can see that's where you get the Talmud from, where they have a look of being an Israelite. They have a look or a way of being an Israelite, but they still practice their heathenistic ways, which is again where the Talmud came from, which is where you see these so-called what are they called, rabbis circumcising children with their mouths, man. You know, that's where that comes from. So they you know, they didn't adopt the things that were making people persecute the Jews. They you know, they kept their way, but they just put again the name on it, right? So I wanted to read this last part. It talks right here. It says, though the Khazar courts conversion was no doubt politically motivated, right? The courts, that's just meaning like the upper echelon, right? So the rulers of that land. So the common people, they weren't calling themselves Jews, or they weren't practicing the Israelite way, because to the whole world at the time it was foreign, right? It says it would still be absurd to imagine that they embraced overnight blindly a religion whose tenets were unknown to them. In fact, however, they had been well acquainted with Jews and their religious observances for at least a century before the conversion, through the continued influx of refugees from religious persecution in Byzantium, and to a lesser extent from countries in Asia Minor conquered by the Arabs. You see? So to flee from all of that persecution that was going on, they went to Khazar, and they had the Khazars, and they had been there for a century, it says here, right? And what did they do? They it says it says it. I think it's in here. I'm gonna keep reading, but if it's not, I'll just speak on it right now. Where they were saying that after a while, you know, our people have a way about us, right? Where people just gravitate to us. And after a while being around those Khazars, the Khazars started to realize that, oh shit, yeah, they're refugees, but they're the way they do things, they're the way they cultivate the land, the way they treat each other, their way is better than our way. So that's what then transferred it just from being the courts, or the Khazar courts, which were the rulers, into being the whole nation of the people, right? So it says, let's see, where did I leave off? It says, we know that Khazaria was a relatively civilized country among the barbarians of the north, yet not committed to either of the militant creeds, and so it became a natural haven for the periodic exodus of Jews under Byzantine rule, threatened by forced conversion and other pressures. Persecution in the varied forms had started with Justinian, and assumed particularly vicious forms under Heraclius in the 7th century, Leo III in the 8th, Basil and Leo the 4th in the 9th, Romanus in the 10th. Thus, Leo III, who ruled during the 2 decades immediately preceding the Khazar conversion to Judaism, attempted to end the anomaly of the tolerated status of the Jews at one blow by ordering all his Jewish subjects to be baptized. Although the implementation of the order seemed to have been rather ineffective, it led to the flight of a considerable number of Jews from Byzantium, Masudi relates. So you can go and read this, like I said, for sake of time. I'm not going to read everything here. There's a lot in here, as you can see. It's a book with a lot of information in it. But in going back to Ezekiel the 36th chapter, you'll see that it says here, therefore, ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord power. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I should say, to the mountains and to the hills, to the rivers and to the valleys, to the desolate wastes, and to the cities that are forsaken. Right. So naturally, especially by this time, a lot of Israel had gone out of the land. Right. By the time the Khazars came around, because this is like the 5th and 6th century, around that time, you know, going into the, you know, the year 800 and on, where Khazars were in power, or where they were being remembered, or where they were being heralded as one of the powers. And that's until the vassals of Russia went in there and took them down. And you can also read that in that book there. But anyway, it says here, Oh, so the point I was trying to make was Israel had been gone. Our people, we had left the land for one reason or another, and the land was forsaken and desolate, right? It says, into the cities that are forsaken, which became a prey and derision to the residue of the heathen that are round about. And here's the last verse that I'm going to read for the night. It says, therefore, thus saith the Lord power, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, and against all Idumea, which have appointed my land into their possession in the joy of all their heart with despiteful minds to cast it out for a prey. You see? So just in these, in these 5 verses, I was able to, get those 2 articles out of it. We were being persecuted, which is us being held in infamy of the people, being swallowed up on every side, no matter where you went. To call yourself an Israelite or to call yourself a Jew was going to get you in some kind of trouble, some way, shape, or form. So the Khazars took advantage of that, and they took our land, man. They took our name, they took our land, they took our heritage, and they took it on themselves, but still, maintaining their pagan ways, you see. So that was long. I hope it's worth listening to. I hope that it's edifying. I hope that you enjoy it, and you use this information for when you go out there and you're speaking to somebody, or you out in the, at camp on the highways and byways speaking. This is some more ammunition for you. All right. So with that being said, I want to give all praises to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Double honors to the elder apostles of GMS who rule well, and honor and salutations to those of you who are of the elect. I appreciate you, you watching, and I'm gonna do another part to this that touches on those Edomites that are in our land, not actually being the children of Israel. So there's another part coming, another couple of parts coming, at least 2 more parts, and then like I said, I'll move on to the next topic. But with that, I want to say shalom.